Hello, and welcome to me resurrecting an old series, a series that got me most of my subs on YouTube. Resurrecting it because I never really wanted to give this up because I do enjoy doing this, but trying to find a new way to do it. And here's me and my new attempt. One of the things is that YouTube is much harsher on copyright than it was when I first started this series, and it was rough then. So, one thing that will be changing is you'll get a lot more pictures of my face. However, if this works properly, what I will do is go ahead and give you a nice little background of the movie that should still be copyright free because my glowing smiling face is still here. So let's go ahead and bring up the scorecards and let's go ahead and talk about the two movies that are the topic of this video, and that is 2013's Man of Steel and 2025's Superman. And let's get right to it. Here's our first category. So let's go ahead and break down the stories. So the story for Man of Steel was by David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan, with screenplay by David S. Goyer, with Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster getting credits for creating the character. The storytelling in this is something I actually like quite a bit. It's actually very simple. What it does is it starts out on Krypton, and I feel like in Krypton we let Zack Snyder kind of do whatever he wants. He has this crazy visual flair. We have dragons, and he kind of does what he wants. But we also have the underlying storyline about how Krypton is this genetically engineered super race, and how the council has now led them to destruction, how they've mined their planet to oblivion. And two people who think they should have acted sooner are Jor-El and Zod. However, they also have very differing philosophies. Jor-El feels they should have gone away from genetically engineering their race, gone to a more natural approach and explored the universe and continued exploring the universe. Zod thinks they should have done exactly what they should have done always, but maybe just purified more races. While 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 Jor-El is more the scientist in this, Zod is, for lack of a better word, the Nazi in this.
And if your forces prevail, you'll be the leader of nothing.
Then join me. Help me save our race. We'll start anew. We'll sever the degenerative bloodlines that led us to this state.
So obviously, even though those two definitely feel the council has let the planet down, they do not agree at all. They are pretty hardcore against each other. And it sets up this interesting dynamic that kind of runs throughout the movie of Zod wanting to pretty much be the traditionalist. He wants to bring Krypton back. He wants to make Krypton great again. Whereas Jor-El and later on Kal-El think they should progress and move on and make a life with the humans as much as possible. These are key conflicts that run throughout the movie that I really enjoy. I also really appreciate a lot of the storytelling in this. So a lot of this is done through flashbacks. So obviously we get the Krypton flashback and it's all cool. It's all Snyder. Looks cool. I kind of enjoy it. It's kind of fun. Even with the gratuitous penis-like ships that seem really unnecessary. But hey, whatever. Zack Snyder's gonna Zack Snyder. But once we get to Earth, we start seeing Superman's younger life. We see him in a classroom where his senses are going on overload. His mother helps coach him on how to focus up his senses, because none of the other kids are going to understand because they aren't Kryptonian. We get this flashback to this bus crashing. And this is where we get to one of the most controversial scenes, and we'll really break this down when we get supporting cast. But the scene where Superman saves the bus and his dad says, "Maybe you shouldn't have done that," because his dad is concerned that when Superman is out there, the world will freak out that there's an alien. Kind of understandable. And I feel like there's an interesting idea for a story here that isn't fully explored, and we'll talk about that a bit more later. But I like seeing these flashbacks of Superman just kind of growing up, saving people on his journey. It's very simple ways to show his character without, like, really harnessing it strictly into a story that I thoroughly enjoy. It gives us a nice kind of origin of Superman without, like, honestly being too traditional. It feels more like a fresher, more real take on what the character would be. And I really appreciate this. It also takes us to, and we eventually get to Lois Lane, who is investigating this alien craft in the Antarctic, and she's investigating this random stranger who was working there, who somehow can interact with the alien craft and who saves her life. And she investigates, she finds out this alien stranger is actually this farm boy from Kansas called Clark Kent. She tracks him down, figures out he's the alien, and I love that element. We'll get more into that when we get into supporting cast. But overall, with this story, there's a lot to really appreciate. I like how it feels more real, more grounded, more lived in. I think that really works to this movie's benefit. Where it really lets you down is it, as much as we're seeing lots of Superman's actions, we aren't learning as much about his character as I would like. And his character arc is a key element in the story since he's the main character. I would like to know more about his character, his ideas of morals, what he thinks are right and wrong, why he does what he does. In one of the flashback scenes, there's this whole moment where there's this tornado in Smallville, and it's about ready to hit a whole bunch of the townspeople. And unfortunately, in their hurry to get out, they accidentally left the dog in the truck. Superman's like, "I'll go get him," and Pa Kent's like, "No, I don't want you to expose yourself to these people. I will go and get the dog." And he goes and gets the dog, but he gets his foot trapped, so he's not able to get away. Superman's about ready to save him, and then Pa Kent does his hand motion, stopping Clark from saving him. And Clark agrees and doesn't save him, and Pa Kent is dead. And this really feels like this should be the turning point of his character. This should be the moment where he says, he was wrong. I'm Superman, and I'm going to save people if I can. But he doesn't. Like, this whole dramatic moment happens. And the movie seems to think that Pa Kent was right because Jor-El is who's also in this movie as this sentient AI seems to think that Superman should be a beacon to the people of Earth. He should be he should be hope for them. Um, Whereas Pa Kent, Jonathan Kent thinks he should hide and stay away from the people of Earth because he doesn't trust the people of Earth. These are both understandable positions. But from the perspective of Superman, I find it strange how he's going around saving people, but at the same time, thinking that Jonathan Kent was right, that he shouldn't be doing this out in public, that maybe some people should be left to die. And it really feels like there's the bare bones of a really great Superman story here, but because someone in here, I'm going to say Zack Snyder, doesn't understand how all this should come together and is more focused on making things look cool and having a cool vibe and not understanding the story elements that will really help contribute to the story, it really feels like it's missing a lot of moments. And one of the big elements that really makes you question what what Superman's motives are is when we have the fight in Smallville and Metropolis, where he really doesn't seem all that concerned with the people. Like, yeah, he tells them to go inside, but like for the most part, he's just fighting fairly recklessly. And to a degree, I can't forgive that because this is his first battle that we've seen. So most likely his first battle ever, especially with other superpowered beings. He would be way out of his element. These are a whole bunch of Kryptonians that are military trained. The only advantage he has is that he is used to the atmosphere and they are not. He is used to his powers and they are not. That is his only advantage. But otherwise, these guys are military trained. They're fighters. They know what they're doing. But still, even with that, Superman should be learning. He should be like, if there's if he accidentally throws somebody through a building and he sees there's a bystander there, he rushes over to save the bystander quickly, and we see him learning as the fight's going on, just like, oh my god, there's so many people around here. I have to try to protect them during this fight. But we don't see that. Instead, what we see as we get to Metropolis is him grabbing Zod and flying him into buildings. And it's really baffling because throughout the movie we see him saving a lot of people, but then in the final fight, all of a sudden he doesn't give a shit. But then we get to the next snap scene where he does it to save a family. And again, I kind of get it, except we've seen him be reckless with people before. So does he care about human life? Does he not care about human life? That's what makes this movie so frustrating because it feels like it's so close to being a great Superman movie and kind of settles for being a serviceable Superman movie, a good enough Superman movie. And that's frustrating. And again, it feels a lot like Zack Snyder is just doesn't have the interest to really explore the character of Superman and would much rather just have things look cool. That's what this movie feels like. And now let's look at the story of Superman 2025, which is directed by James Gunn and also written by James Gunn. Again, with credits to Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel as creators of Superman. And this story is largely about Superman discovering who he is. So there's a whole wall of text, maybe not a wall of text is not the correct term because they come up gradually, but there's a whole bunch of it. And, he does this um, synchronicity with the number three, which I kind of like. But this movie isn't an origin story unlike Man of Steel. It begins minutes after Superman's first defeat after coming out as Superman as the most powerful metahuman on Earth. There's other metahumans as this text establishes. This movie begins immediately when Superman's beaten, and he has to go to Fortress and heal. We learned that he was beaten by this new supervillain called the Hammer of Bravia. And the reason why the Hammer of Bravia was after Superman was because he interfered with Bravian, the Bravian invasion of Jarampor, which, by the way, this is not an analogy for anything real life. Sure, trust me. But what we learn is the Hammer Bravia is actually seems to be owned and operated by Lex Luthor. The reason why he's able to beat Superman kind of easily is because he is following Lex Luthor's orders, and Lex Luthor has studied Superman's fighting abilities and is giving him, these quick code words that will allow him to do these complex maneuvers fairly quickly.
12C. 18A.
And we learn that Superman and a lot of his morals he bases on this fractured message that he got from his father.
The message was damaged in transit from Krypton to Earth. But what is there? We love you more than heaven, our son. We love you more than land. Our beloved home will soon be gone forever. But hope vitalizes our hearts, and that hope is you, Kal-El. We have searched the universe for a home where you can do the most good and live out Krypton's truth. That place is Earth.
And Lex Luthor kind of uses this fight to track down Superman's Fortress of Solitude. At which point he tracks down that message, and he finds out, and Lex Luthor and the engineer are able to break down the full message, and that brings us into our big second act twist that the Jor-El of this universe, at least according to this movie, it might be changed later, but according to this movie, Jor-El sent Superman to conquer Earth.
The people there are simple and profoundly confused, weak of mind and spirit and body. Lord over the planet as the last son of Krypton.
Dispatch of anyone unable or unwilling to serve you, Kal-El. Take as many wives as you can, so your genes and Krypton's might and legacy will live on in this new frontier.
Do us proud, our beloved son. Rule without mercy.
And to take as many wives as possible and spread that Kryptonian seed all over the place. And obviously, Superman is shaken by this. Superman has based a lot of what he is and what he does based on the message of his father of essentially, I love you. We're sending you down to Earth to do good. And that's pretty much about as much the message as he was able to get. Now, with the rest of the message, he is completely shaken. He is not the person he thought he was. And this is something he has to explore. And this is a key element we'll be exploring. And we'll talk about this more when we get to the hero category. But it's hugely relevant here. Because who Superman is a huge topic of this movie. It's also a huge topic of Man of Steel. However, unlike Man of Steel, this movie explores that element. We see who Superman is. We know what he is trying to do. He is simply trying to do good. And he is not perfect. He's going to make mistakes. In fact, he can say it best himself.
You piece of shit alien!
That is where you've always been wrong about me, Lex. I'm as human as anyone. I love, I get scared. I wake up every morning and despite not knowing what to do, I put one foot in front of the other and I try to make the best choices I can. I screw up all the time. But that is being human. And that's my greatest strength. And someday, I hope, for the sake of the world, you understand that it's yours too.
And I cannot stress how much Man of Steel needs some sort of moment like that. Because I'm not even sure if this movie needed that moment. Because there's lots of moments throughout this that are kind of establishing who Superman is throughout this whole movie. Yet, in Man of Steel, there's not a single moment like that. And it gives this movie a huge step up as far as story. Not to mention that this movie gives us lots of great supporting characters. And while the Man of Steel also gives us great supporting characters, lots of them aren't thoroughly explored, whereas lots of them here feel really fully explored. This just feels like a much more well-rounded comic book universe, and it really functions. Like, say what you will about Man of Steel. One of my issues is I don't feel it fully understands the character of Superman. Superman 2025 fully understands the character of Superman. And for that reason alone, I'm giving it a point in story.
My point is, I question everything and everyone. You trust everyone and think everyone you've ever met is, like, beautiful.
Maybe that's the real punk rock.
Now, for the next category, let's talk about visuals. Superman 2025 looks beautiful. It's a fun movie. It has comic book lighting scheme. We have all these colorful suits. Nothing is drab or dark unnecessarily. It feels like a comic book universe.
You were out there helping them?
Oh no, that's just some dimensional imp. They've got that handled. I was looking for the dog.
So you have all these different superheroes all looking bright and colorful.
Everybody, clear the area!
And it looks awesome. It's a fun movie. We get to see the pocket dimension. We get to see how like they end up in almost like this lava pit in the pocket dimension, except it's not lava. It looks like it's digital once it's in there. And there's lots of interesting little visuals they throw in there in this new pocket universe that they created. And it looks weird, but also looks semi-incomplete, which of course plays into the story overall. And visually, I like the look of this movie. It works quite well. However, we look over at Man of Steel. Man of Steel is a Zack Snyder movie, and like all Zack Snyder movies, there is that visual flair that is undeniable. There's, despite the fact that this lighting is brought down, it's a bit darker than Superman. I wish it was a bit brighter, but there are some beautiful visuals that cannot be denied. The Krypton segment is over the top and ridiculous, but at the same time, I do enjoy it quite a bit. It's a visual feast to look at. Say what you will, it looks awesome. But you also, like, Zack Snyder really makes use of the Kryptonian technology. When you have Jor-El telling Superman about the origin of Krypton, and it's all this, like, this metal plating apparently taking form and kind of showing him the story as Jor-El tells it, and it looks beautiful.
You came from Krypton. A world with a much harsher environment than Earth's. Long ago, in an era of expansion, our race spread out through the stars, seeking new worlds to settle upon.
Well, there's so many beautiful visuals here that it's impossible to give the point to anything else. As much as I like the look of Superman 2025 and appreciate they're going for the more brighter, colorful tone, from a strictly visual standpoint, I'm giving the point to Man of Steel.
We built outposts on other planets, using great machines to reshape environments to our needs. For 100,000 years, our civilization flourished.
And since we just talked about visuals, let's go ahead and talk about sounds. So, Looking at the soundtrack, you might expect me to just immediately give the point to Man of Steel because it has Hans Zimmer.
Is to keep testing your limits.
And spoiler, I am going to give the point to Man of Steel, and Hans Zimmer is definitely a contribution. But there's also other elements, because I do think the score for Superman 2025 is actually quite good as well. It's not Hans Zimmer good, but I do enjoy it quite a bit.
Hey, buddy. Eyes up here.
The music for Superman 2025 is done by David Fleming and John Murphy, and I overall love the score. I like how like there's elements throughout the Superman mythos that they really play tribute to. Like there's elements of the Hans Zimmer score in there. There's elements of the John Williams score in there. They really go throughout Superman's history, and I really appreciate that. But from a strictly score standpoint, I really like what Hans Zimmer does with Man of Steel. It's actually a soundtrack I've listened to on its own a few times, and it sounds so cool. It sounds so epic. It does such a great job. So if we're looking just at the score, I'm giving it to Hans Zimmer because Hans Zimmer just such a great composer. I'm a fan of his work, although not everything. But he this is definitely one of his highlights. I think an argument can be made Man of Steel is Hans Zimmer's best score ever. But then we also look at sound effects and other elements. How else does this work? From a strictly sound standpoint, all the recording's done well, so it's tough to judge on stuff like that. It's a professional movie. That's gonna be well done. But there's lots of science fiction sounds for the phaser weapons and just these weird alien tentacles. And of course, you got a sky beam, and it all sounds epic and cool. And it's all really well done. And the closest thing we get in Superman to 2025 to cool and epic sounds is probably the Raptors, which
Kill him!
Good luck with that.
not all that thrilling. There's not a whole lot of sounds in Superman 2025 that stand out any more than Man of Steel does. So even though I have less to talk about in this category, and part of that is simply because I think it's kind of a slam dunk. Man of Steel gets the point as far as sounds. So let's go ahead and talk about genre. So this is one of those categories where I kind of need a seventh just to make an odd number. But the way I always use this category is what is the movie shooting for and does it hit what it's shooting for? So obviously, in Man of Steel, it's much more sci-fi than your typical Superman movie. They're definitely going hard into the sci-fi element, in fact. And I actually really appreciate that. It gives it this cool vibe. Unfortunately, where it lets us down is with Superman himself, because the other core element of this story is who is Superman. We're supposed to be exploring who Superman is in Man of Steel. And we don't really get that. We don't really get that at all. And that really causes Man of Steel to suffer in this category. Because I feel like, again, they're close to a great movie, but they can't quite grab it. And that's an issue. They're not hitting the movie that really feels like they're close to, but they can't quite get that one. Then we look at Superman 2025. And frankly, I feel like this movie has less lofty goals, but it hits them solidly. Like, I can't think of a single moment of this movie where they're not hitting the goal that they're intending to hit, where they're not hitting the emotional beat they want to hit, where they're not hitting the character beat they want to hit. This movie is handled pretty successfully. So another shorter category, because frankly, in this one, Superman 2025 has this easily. It is definitely the movie it intended to be, whereas Man of Steel kind of drops the ball quite a bit to a frustrating level.
What? Yeah?
It's just a little off.
What do you want me to do? Do you want me to take it apart and put it back together?
No. It was just...
You just what?
Hey, man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bum you out. I shouldn't have brought it up. Darn it, I can be such a jerk sometimes.
So let's go ahead and talk about some supporting cast here. So in Superman 2025, we have Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. We have Neva Howe as Martha Kent. We have Pruitt Taylor Finch as Jonathan Kent. We have Edie Gathegi as Mr. Terrific. Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner. Isabella Merced as Hawkgirl. Anthony Carrigan as Metamorpho. Skylar Gisondo as Jimmy Olsen. Wendell Pierce as Perry White. Sarah Sampio as Eve Tessmacher. And we cannot forget Alan Tudyk as Four, later named Gary. And I do appreciate the touch of Superman calling him Four, and then the robot saying, essentially, I like the name Gary, and then Superman, very next moment, calls him Gary, which is awesome. I love that.
Maybe one day you'll give me a name.
Well, Four's a name.
So is Gary. Superman, would you like to see the footage of your parents? He finds it soothing.
Oh.
Yeah, Gary. That'd be nice.
Thus establishing that chosen names are very much valid. Just saying. I feel like Superman 2025 is packed with a lot of characters. There's a lot going on here. But what it does really well is explore all these characters quite well. Lois Lane is a very, intrepid and stubborn reporter, much to the frustration of Clark Kent, aka Superman.
Okay, so I'll let you interview me.
I'm pretty sure you wouldn't like that.
Come on, Lois. I'm media savvy. I can handle any question that comes my way.
Are you being serious right now?
Yeah.
You'd let me interview you as Superman.
Sure.
How about now?
There's several moments where she's giving him a hard interview, and he is getting unbelievably frustrated.
Delicate
Gurkos
situation.
and his goons were going to kill people.
Yes, but the results of you seemingly acting as a representative of
I
the
wasn't
United States will
representing
cause
anybody
more
except for me.
problems around the
And-
world,
and
more than a
myself.
war that
And-
lasted
and-
between
and good,
12
I don't know,
and
doing
24 hours
good.
and was just replacing one tyrannical regime with another.
Is that really how you feel?
I'm not the one being interviewed, Superman, but I question it. Yeah, I would question myself in the same situation and hold off a beat and consider the consequences.
People were going to die!
I do appreciate about her that about her. They're really showing that side of her in this movie, which I think is great. In fact, I would argue that as far as showing Lois Lane as an actual reporter doing a good job, this movie probably does the best job of anything else I've seen. We also have the Justice Gang, which involves Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, and later on, Metamorpho. And all four of these characters get some solid stuff to work with. I do find it shocking how this movie is comic accurate to what a douchebag Guy Gardner is. Yet you still end up kind of liking him at the end of this movie. It's fucking weird, because he is a total douchebag, but it's kind of like, hey, he's our douchebag. Why not?
My knee! Guy! Help!
I made giant oven mitts!
I do feel like Hawkgirl gets kind of lost in the mess. That being said, she does get to kill Benjamin Netanyahu, and that is cool.
I know you won't kill me! You are too delicate and weak, like Superman!
I'm not like Superman.
I'm sorry. I meant the President of Bravia. Completely different characters. I apologize. There's clearly no connection. Mr. Terrific is by far the standout and easily one of my favorite characters here. He is the member of the Justice Gang who doesn't quite go along with the group. And when Lois is looking for help to rescue Superman, he's the one that goes, yeah, I'll go help you. Why not? He proves to be invaluable in saving Superman from Lex Luthor when he's captured. Quite badass with those T-spheres, if I have to say so myself. And then the other vital characters that I feel are necessary to talk about, although they don't have very huge roles, are Martha and Jonathan Kent, who are just seen as like kind of simple farm people who just care about their son. And frankly, I love it. They come off as like, yeah, they're a little backwater. They don't understand the technology all that well. But you know what? They love Clark Kent. And that's the most important thing to them. The safety of Clark Kent and him being the man he wants to be. And that's kind of beautiful. And Pa Kent gets this beautiful moment with Clark that really just sets up Clark for the rest of the movie.
Your choices, Clark. Your actions. That's what makes you who you are. I'll tell you something, son. I couldn't be more proud of you.
It's really well done. And they show how, at the end of the day, doesn't matter what Jor-El says, Jonathan and Martha Kent are his parents, and that it's rather touching. But now let's look at the other side, because in Man of Steel, for our supporting cast, we get Amy Adams as Lois Lane, we get Diane Lane as Martha Kent, we get Russell Crowe as Jor-El, we get Kevin Costner as Jonathan Kent, and we get Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. Again, I feel like these are good castings, and for the most part, they work. But there are definitely some loose ends. One I would like to point out here is Russell Crowe as Jor-El. I didn't know what I would think of him as Jor-El, but I actually end up really liking him. My one complaint is essentially how he stored a consciousness for his son to interact with, but couldn't do the same thing with his wife.
His cells will drink its radiation. It's a seemingly intelligent population.
You'll be an outcast. A freak. They'll kill him.
How? You'll be a god to them.
Kind of shitty, Jor-El. You should have done that for your wife as well. But moving on. I love how he wants Superman to be this beacon for people. How he seems almost excited about the idea that his son could be this big hero on this planet. And proud of what he could be. And I like that about this movie. I think Russell Crowe's Jor-El is a definitely highlight. I think Amy Adams as Lois Lane has elements I like. I really like the fact that she figures out who Clark Kent is before she even knows him. She just figures out, oh, there's this mysterious being on the planet with superpowers. And then she figures out, oh, it's Clark Kent and he has superpowers. And I love that element. I wish they did more with him, because it does feel like in the third act they don't really know what to do with her. So, like...
Are you the ranking officer here?
I am.
General Zod would like this woman to accompany me.
You asked for the alien.
You didn't say anything about one of our own.
Shall I tell the General you're unwilling to comply?
I don't care what you tell him.
For some reason, she's going up onto the Kryptonian ship for no real discernible reason, and she has to be saved by Superman because of course she does. It just all feels kind of unnecessary and forced and ridiculous. Perry White as Lawrence Fishburne, I think he does a good job. I like the elements where they're in the street and they're having to work together. Because one of the elements about this movie I do like is how Superman and the people of Earth have to work together to defeat Kryptonians. It's not just Superman fighting the Kryptonians.
Hold on, hold on.
I'm stuck. I can't get free. I'm stuck.
It's okay. We'll get you out of there, all right? You just sit tight.
And Perry White finds himself on the street helping save his co-workers, which is cool and heroic. So it's a nice touch. I still kind of wish they did a bit more of his character, but I do feel like you get a good feel of him here. And that really kind of brings us to Jonathan and Martha Kent here, which I find really, really frustrating because to a degree, one could argue they are arguing for the same thing that Jonathan and Martha Kent are arguing for in Superman 2025, where they just want their son to do good and he needs to choose who he is and just be a good person. Here they think it's important that he chooses who he is, but they don't seem to give a fuck whether or not he's a good or a bad person. I find that absolutely bizarre.
I just wanted to help.
I know you did, but we talked about this. Right? Right? We talked about this. You have... Oh, Clark, you have to keep this side of yourself a secret.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
In what universe do parents not care if their child's a good or bad person? Of course you want your child to be a good person. Yes, they need to decide who they are, but they should probably be good as well. They should probably have a good ethical subset. And here, they almost seem to be arguing at times that maybe he shouldn't be saving people. Hell, Jonathan even lets himself die rather than have Clark save him, which seems bizarre. But I was willing to let that go as long as it's a lesson for Clark to learn. And it fucking wasn't. As far as I could tell, the lesson was Jonathan's right. You should sometimes hide, but sometimes be out there. I feel like in this movie, they're really going for a balancing act where Jonathan and Martha were teaching him how to be Clark, and Jor-El was teaching him how to be Superman, but really doesn't come together that way. It ends up coming together as this mishmash, and it really doesn't work well at all. And Jonathan and Martha really bring down the movie, in my opinion, because I find them so frustrating. So as you can probably guess, at the end of the day, I'm giving Superman 2025 the point for Best Supporting Cast.
Hey, the Contaclosal Rift is in here. I can help.
I don't need your help. I'm goddamn Mr. Terrific.
That brings us to our penultimate category, villains. It's Michael Shannon's Zod versus Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor. And both of these, I think, are great for very different reasons, although I will say they both choose scenery quite a bit, which I do appreciate.
No shit. I'm not dim. I'm aware envy consumes my every waking moment. They mention Galileo or Einstein or one of these other twits in the same breath as me. I feel a tide of vomit burn the back of my throat. But at least Galileo did something. He wasn't some dopey Venusian catapulted onto this planet just to have the world fawn over him.
You believe your son is safe?
I will find him. I will find him. I will find him, Lara. I will find him!
But with Zod, there is this traditionalist approach versus the more modern, the newer, the fresher approach, the more progressive approach of Superman. And I do appreciate that element. Michael Shannon just destroys scenery so often in this movie, and I really do appreciate it. Him yelling, "I will find you," in the prologue to this movie is just solid gold. I love it. And he is clearly having fun with this role. It's And I think he makes a great General Zod, to be honest. He comes off as menace. He comes off as someone who's trained to know what to do, trained to know how to fight, a real threat to Superman. And overall, I can't say I have too many complaints about General Zod in this. I think he works overall in this movie. I think he's one of the bright spots of this movie. And that brings us over to Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor in Superman 2025, who is just somebody driven with jealousy and envy over Superman, who just wants to see him defeated. That is something that is not just explored in his actions, but also explored in dialogue. It's very clear who he is and what he wants. And again, I think he's a bright spot in this movie. I love his motivation, how it's he knows he's being petty and shitty and envious. But you know what? He also knows he's Lex Luthor, and he's gonna Lex Luthor if he wants to Lex Luthor. I like how this movie explores who Lex Luthor is a bit more than a lot of other movies do. I like how we get to see the real scientific genius of Lex Luthor here, how he's cloning Superman, how he's making other super beings like the Engineer. There's lots of cool stuff they put in this movie. And Lex Luthor throughout the movie is very single-minded in his goal to destroy Superman. He's created this whole conflict between Bravia and Jarhimpor. How Bravia is this country who is allied with the United States, and they want to invade and take over this neighboring country called Jarhimpor, who is kind of backwater and doesn't really have much in the way of resources. And it forces Superman to get in the middle and say, you can't fucking do that. Those people want sovereignty. They deserve sovereignty. And because that, it causes the US government to start questioning Superman. And then the whole message that Lex Luthor is the one to leak of Jor-El saying that Superman's here to conquer you adds to that. And the whole social media aspect, how Lex Luthor is manipulating so much of social media and putting out so much fake information to make Superman look bad. It really covers a lot of the basis of the world we currently live in, while also feeling true to the character of Lex Luthor. Yes, Lex Luthor would absolutely do that. Would Lex Luthor make an army of super intelligent monkeys and dedicate them solely to being evil trolls on the internet, shit-talking and pushing out misinformation? You better bet he would. As much as I really enjoy Michael Shannon in this, I really appreciate Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor just a bit more. I believe these are two strengths of the movie. Michael Shannon does great as Zod. Nicholas Hoult does great as Lex Luthor. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be honest, this is a pretty close toss-up for me. But I'm going to go ahead and give it to Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor. For me, it just works just a little bit better. But Michael Shannon's Zod, I think, is fantastic as well.
Just my monkey bots here farming outrage 24/7, trashing you online.
Hashtag super shit.
That brings us to our final category, the hero. And I think this is the most important one. When you're talking about the first chapter in a superhero story, how does it handle your hero, your main guy? It's David Cornsweet's Superman, Clark Kent, versus Henry Cavill's Clark Kent, Superman. And before I get too far, I want to stress, I actually think Henry Cavill does a really good job in this. He emotes a lot of emotion. He does a solid job giving us a character. In fact, I would argue he does a better job giving us character than the script does. And I know a lot of people have issues with them relating Superman to Jesus in this movie, which, let's be honest, they're doing a lot.
Even if I surrender, there's no guarantee he'll keep his word. But if there's a chance, I can save Earth by turning myself in. Shouldn't I take it?
I don't have an issue with that. I feel every adaptation can have its own version, because that's what an adaptation is. If they want to relate this version of Superman to Jesus, they're welcome to do that. The problem is, they're not doing it particularly well. How they're relating him to Jesus is essentially having him come out as Superman around 30, about the time Jesus came out. Having him surrender himself. And then 2 scenes where one, he's almost like making the form of the crucifix, and then one where he's confessing to a priest with Jesus just right fucking there behind him. Kind of obnoxious and in your face. And that's kind of about it. And that's another frustrating thing about this movie. If you want to go for the Jesus parallel, you can do it. The movie definitely finds moments, and there's other moments too, but like it doesn't go all the way. Because going for the Jesus story wouldn't have him hiding and letting his dad die and maybe contemplating letting other people die. That wouldn't be part of the Jesus story. But it's part of this story. And it's frustrating because if you want your Superman to be a Jesus metaphor, make him a Jesus metaphor. Don't just throw in Jesus imagery and have maybe 2 moments in the story that kind of line up with Jesus to a degree, but not perfectly. It doesn't quite work. It feels like they're shoehorning in Jesus stuff without really doing the research and doing the work to make the Jesus metaphor work in this. Even if I put that aside, they don't seem to understand the character of Superman in this. We see him saving people, but we also see him being reckless with people. It's like he cares about people's lives, but he also doesn't care about people's lives. It's not clear at all what his morals are, which makes it all the more confusing when he snaps Zod's neck at the end. An action that I don't object to. What I object to is the fact that I don't know why he yells. Like he snaps Zod's neck and he yells. The problem is, we've seen him be kind of careless with lives before. Why is he suddenly caring about killing Zod? Yeah, he tries to save some humans, but then he also will grab Zod and fly him through a fucking building. So does he care about taking lives? Does he not care about taking lives? Maybe explore this more than just having him yell after snapping Zod's neck. I don't know, just a thought. Crazy idea, I know. But let's go to the other side. Let's talk about David Cornsweet's Superman. And frankly, it's a character that's pretty fucking well defined. One of the great moments in this movie is that interview between Lois Lane and Superman right at the beginning, where she gets to interview Superman. And we see him kind of lose it and get angry at her. But we're also seeing his character. We're also seeing that this is the guy who frankly just wants to save people. That's why it's so important to have that scene so early in the movie, because it's establishing his character before it turns it on its head and we find out the real message from Jor-El. It's establishing who Superman is for the audience, and it's doing a great job of that, because he is simply a guy who's getting frustrated at Lois for questioning him when his whole goal is just to save the day, to do the right thing, to protect people's lives. And I feel this movie understands that way more than Man of Steel. In fact, I would argue this movie, Superman 2025, is the movie that understands Superman more than any other movie I've seen. Well, live action movie, let me stress. Superman vs. the Elite is pretty good. If you haven't seen it, make sure to check it out. But Superman 2025, as far as live action movies, really fucking understands Superman. I would even argue it understands Superman maybe even more than the Christopher Reeve Richard Donner original. Because this is a Clark Kent. Yes, he puts on the goofy hairdo and looks silly, but it's a Clark Kent who feels more like a real person. I'm not quite sure if I'd call David Cornsweet my favorite Superman yet. I want to see him more, but I really like him. And for future reference, my current favorite live-action Superman is Tyler Hoechlin. Take of that what you will. But we'll see. I think David Cornsweet is in the running to become my new favorite, and I love what they do with him in this movie. He feels like a well-defined person. He feels like Superman. He's just an empathetic, caring person. And who knows, maybe the movie's right. Maybe just being a caring person is the new punk rock.
This hide is tough, but
It's off balance. I've been trying to figure out a way to get it out of here alive. Get it someplace where we can study it.
Oh, come on, man.
What?
Go for inside!
So we'll see how this comes together. As you can tell, this wasn't scripted. This is me coming off top of my head, discussing all this stuff. I hope you enjoyed this version, because this will be a version I can put together faster and hopefully get out faster, and maybe get out a few more of these, because I miss doing videos like this. I like comparing these movies, and one thing I always want to keep in mind, one thing I want you guys all to know, is when I do videos like this, I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong. If you think Man of Steel is better than Superman 2025, that's entirely your opinion, because all art is subjective. All art is in the eyes of the beholder. All I'm doing with these videos is making my case. I'm pulling up all the evidence I can and making my case as to why I think one movie is better than the other. This is absolutely not objective. If you want to make a movie where Man of Steel is way better than Superman and debunk this one, go right ahead, because it's all subjective. How we view art is subjective. How art is an emotional thing that hits us, and how it hits us all is differently. And I'll be honest, when it comes to hitting us emotionally, Man of Steel couldn't quite get me. There's not enough emotion in that to get me. It's one of the issues that just feels dry and almost impersonal with how dark and gritty and real it is. Superman 2025 had moments that hit me. Moments where it's like, this is Superman. This is a man who cares, and I want him to win. I feel victory when he wins, and it feels great. So overall, as much as I appreciate what Man of Steel was going for, I don't think it hit it. But Superman 2025 is exactly a movie it intended to be. And frankly, it's my favorite superhero movie of the year, and definitely my favorite live-action Superman movie.
Because I can live with it. I can live with it.